The Kashari didn't understand humans. Not really. They understood that humans were soft, laughably so. No claws. No fangs worth mentioning. No protective fur against the biting winds of the frontier colonies. They understood that humans were weak, requiring technological assistance for nearly everything the Kashari accomplished with their natural strength. And they understood, perhaps most bewilderingly, that humans seemed to enjoy taking care of things that couldn't take care of themselves. This last point was what had brought Marin Solis to the Pack settlement on Varos 3. The colony had been established as a joint venture Kashari, providing security and raw physical labor. Humans contributing engineering expertise and agricultural knowledge. It should have been simple. It should have been transactional. But humans, as pack leader Threxus had learned over the past standard year, were never simple. Marin Solis was perhaps the least simple of them all. She had arrived with the third wave of human colonists, a xenobiologist with credentials that meant little to the Keshari but apparently impressed her own kind. What did impress the pack was her complete lack of fear. Where other humans maintained a respectful distance from the 2-meter-tall apex predators, with their leonine features and razor-sharp claws, Marin walked among them as if she belonged. "Your cubs are malnourished," she'd told Threxus on her second day, standing in the communal den with her hands on her hips, somehow managing to look authoritative despite being half his size. "Their diet needs supplementing. I've analyzed the local flora. There are 3 plant species that will provide what they're missing." She'd been right, of course. Within 2 lunar cycles, the cubs had grown stronger, their manes thicker and healthier. Threxus had grudgingly admitted that perhaps humans had some value beyond their machines. But then Marin had done something that no Kashari could have predicted. She'd started spending time with the cubs, not observing them for research, not studying their development patterns or recording their behavioral data. She simply played with them, told them stories in her strange, soft human voice, brought them treats she'd synthesized in her lab, and one evening, when young Yiru had complained that the tangles in his growing mane hurt, she'd sat down with him and done something extraordinary. She'd braided his mane. Threxus had watched from the den entrance, initially ready to intervene if the human harmed his pack brother's cub, but Yiru had sat perfectly still, his tail swishing contentedly. As Marin's clever fingers worked through his thick mane, she'd hummed something a human lullaby, perhaps, and created intricate patterns in the cub's fur. "There," Marin had said, tying off the final braid with a strip of synthetic fiber. "Now it won't tangle while you sleep, and you look very handsome." Yiru had chirped the Kashari equivalent of a child's delighted laugh and bounded away to show the other cubs. Marin had simply smiled, packed up her small kit of combs and ties, and returned to the human quarters. Threxus had thought that would be the end of it. A kind gesture. A moment of cross-species bonding. Nothing more. He had been very, very wrong. The next morning, Threxus emerged from his personal quarters to find absolute chaos in the communal area. Cubs lined up in a row that stretched from Marin's door nearly to the settlement's main gate. 37 cubs. By his quick count, every single juvenile in the pack, and even some of the adolescents who should have considered themselves too mature for such things. Yiru stood at the front of the line, his braided mane gleaming in the morning light, looking insufferably proud. "What?" Threxus growled. "Is the meaning of this?" "Marin makes braids," Yiru announced. "I want more braids." "Everyone wants braids. The human is not a," Threxus began, but stopped as Marin's door slid open. She stood there in her sleep clothes, hair disheveled, eyes barely open. She looked at the line of cubs, looked at Threxus, looked back at the cubs, then she started laughing. It wasn't mocking laughter. It was the kind of genuine, delighted sound that humans made when something unexpected brought them joy. She pressed one hand to her face, shoulders shaking, and Threxus found himself uncertain whether she was distressed or amused. "Okay," Marin said finally, wiping her eyes. "Okay. Everyone sit down. This is going to take a while." And she'd sat down right there, outside her door, and started braiding. One by one, the cubs approached. Marin worked with patience that Threxus had rarely seen even among Keshari parents. She created different patterns for each cub, some simple 3-strand braids, others elaborate designs that incorporated colored threads and beads from her personal supplies. She asked each cub their name, complimented their main quality, told them stories about human children and the styles they wore. Hours passed. The morning sun climbed higher. Other humans emerged, saw what was happening, and several returned with chairs, water, and snacks for Marin. A few even sat down to learn the technique, though their fingers lacked Marin's practiced grace. Threxus watched it all, something uncomfortable settling in his chest. This human, this fragile being that should have been prey rather than packmate, had somehow done what he'd thought impossible. She'd made every cub in the settlement feel seen, special, cared for. When the last cubs scampered away with their new braids, Marin stood stiffly, stretching her back with an audible pop. She looked at Threxus, who hadn't moved from his position all morning. "I should probably set up regular hours for this," she said wryly, "before they stage another dawn ambush." "Why?" Threxus asked. The word came out rougher than he'd intended. "Why waste your time on this?" Marin tilted her head, studying him with those peculiar human eyes that somehow conveyed more expression than seemed possible. "Because they asked," she said simply. "Because something small that costs me little can mean a lot to them. Because—" She gestured at the settlement around them, where cubs now played and wrestled, their decorated manes catching the light. "Because we're pack now, aren't we? That's what you call it. Pack takes care of pack." She walked past him then, heading toward the human quarters. But she paused, looking back over her shoulder. "Besides," Marin added with a smile, "you're next, pack leader. That mane of yours is a disaster." Threxus's jaw dropped, his claws reflexively extending, but Marin just laughed and kept walking, and somehow impossibly Threxus found himself thinking that perhaps, just perhaps, having his mane braided wouldn't be so terrible. Humans, he decided, were the strangest predators in the galaxy. They conquered not with fangs or claws, but with gentle hands and infinite patience, and somehow, that made them the most dangerous of all.